Are you concentrating right now?
I'm concentrating very hard, Bill.
Working very hard at it.
Hello. Speaking of seeing, Bill Wadman.
Hello.
Well, I
This is
mean, we
this
might
is
as well
weird.
not.
Only 2 weeks ago we were in the same place.
Yes, I mean, we might as well not even do this anymore now that we're such frequent
Phew.
meeters.
It's like I've almost spent as much time with you as I have with your mom in real life.
Lost and found. When we did meet, we met at Tate Britain because we
Yep.
had a really particular thing to go and see together, which was the Lee Miller exhibition, the retrospective that's on at Tate Britain in London at the moment. Um, and so that's what we're going to talk about this evening. And just before we came on air, I was saying, Bill, that it was actually really difficult to pick images to put into this presentation because not for any particular reason like I'm now done with Lee Miller's work. I just feel that there's such a saturation of her work suddenly, this resurgence of everybody looking and talking about it, that it became hard for me to pick work that I felt might bring something new. Although, of course, you and I might bring something new simply through our discussion about it. Maybe not. But this was quite hard for me to put together.
Trying to figure out what sections of her career were most important, that kind of thing.
Well, it's easy to stay with her in these kind of tranches, isn't it? We could look at Lee Miller model, we can look at Lee Miller surrealist, we
Hmm.
can look at Lee Miller fashion photographer, war correspondent, and so on. And of course, they all kind of converge anyway in some way or another. But I think what I found hard was to not make this too broad. Like you and I tend to speak for just over half an hour usually, and I thought there's no way we can do justice to her life as a body of work, even though of course she stopped photographing after the Second World War, and then didn't return to photography really. But she still wrote articles into the 50s, and she still worked for Vogue, I think. But she certainly didn't have a photographer presence much after her photography correspondence days from World War II. Anyway, I've called it Lost and Found because, as lots of people will know already, of course, Lee Miller's work was put away in the attic in her Sussex home. And it wasn't until after her death that her son, Anthony Penrose, was in the loft digging around, and he found this vast archive of photographs.
Not
And
knowing that his mother was this photographer, or just that the originals were up there, even though everyone, people still knew her work from magazines and whatnot.
no, this is the bit I found really difficult to try and understand just from sources online. Um, I think that Anthony Penrose was not aware of his mother's photography career at all.
That seems odd to me, but okay.
No, it seems odd to me as well, but the way it's written about, and I've tried to corroborate this across different articles, is that he really wasn't aware. I mean, he was aware that she'd moved in artistic circles and that she'd had a camera and that she had taken photographs kind of in a small scale, but he didn't understand this legacy of all these many photographs that she took again across, you know, albeit not the full span of her life, but a substantial amount of photography between the age of, let's say, I guess 18, 19, and then when she was in her 40s. So for him to be unaware of it does seem strange. But anyway, that
Yeah.
appears to be the case. I mean, he knew that she'd been a model. And again, even because of that, I think it's odd to not then have some kind of memento almost of that life more visible in their home, for example.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bill, I don't know about you, but I would urge anybody who is able to go and see the exhibition at Tate
For
Britain.
sure. Yeah.
What did you think of the exhibition, generally?
I thought it was good. I thought maybe it was a room or too much. I get overwhelmed when things are too long. Um, I thought it was a little big, but I thought it was very good. Uh, I thought they definitely broke stuff up in the way that you were describing her career earlier, and those are the obvious places to break it, but it also feels very segregated in that way.
Mm.
Um, uh, yeah, I don't know. It's like I've been thinking about it ever since we were there, and it is interesting to. I mean, a lot of like this early stuff of her as a model, a lot of these images just feel really modern
Mm.
to me.
But do
Like
you think that's
you could
because
go ahead.
there's what is it, Horst? I
Yeah,
can't remember
Horst
the name of
von
the other one,
Horst.
but
Yeah,
she's been photographed so widely
sure,
in the 20s, and she was on the cusp of being a supermodel, really, relative to those times.
sure.
An interesting fact about that, just before we move on to actually talking about the photographs as themselves, she was photographed, and then an image of her was uh, sent to an agency, and she didn't know what she was modeling for. It was just a standard model shot, and it ended up being purchased by Kotex, the
Yeah, the
sanitary products.
yep.
And after that, her modeling career apparently rather dried up. And I was listening to Anthony Penrose, her son, talking, uh, and he said something like nobody wanted the Kotex girl modeling their frocks.
Yeah,
And so
sure.
there was a sense that, she was a great beauty of her time. She was a well-known face, because
Hmm.
she graced the cover of Vogue, for example. But I think her modeling days were perhaps numbered because of the
Yeah,
Kotex
yeah,
photograph scandal, but
yeah.
perhaps also because, well, certainly the advent of war put paid to the frivolities of modelling as she had known it. And I think she does seem to me to be a person of substance. And I'm not saying that modelling isn't a career that is a good career to have and that people who are models don't have substance. But there was definitely something, it seems to me, about Lee Miller that meant she was a powerhouse in a different way, that required something else or something different.
Sure. I
Um,
think she wanted to make the stuff, not just be an ingredient in making the stuff. But I mean, she was also seemingly very, what is the word I'm going for? Um, she had a lot of ambition, uh, and had a certain spunk to her based upon the stories of her showing up at Man Ray's studio and all the rest of it, right? Like that she was just like, nope, I'm here. You're not going to ignore me, kind of thing, which is pretty cool.
well,
Um,
again, you can look all of this up. There are loads of articles on Miller anyway. I mean, this even is before the Tate exhibition. You could find out a
mhm.
lot about Lee Miller.
Watch the movie.
Yes, the Kate Winslet movie. I've not seen that actually, but I think it's interesting to know that she was one of three children, and her father was an amateur photographer, and he used her as a model. She was a favoured child, apparently. And there were lots of things that happened in her young life, I guess, that tested her mettle. That like all experience shapes anyone. The experiences she had in her young life really shaped her. Partly, I think, because it solidified or somehow made more solid the sense of determination and resilience. She strikes me
Hmm.
as an extremely resilient person.
Sure. Yeah.
And again, I don't know, Bill, in the background, you and I spent time looking at her photographs, and obviously there were blurbs on the wall. But I don't know how much you've read about her life as a young woman. She was, I don't know how to say it. Is it Poughkeepsie in New York?
Poughkeepsie.
Poughkeepsie.
Yeah, Poughkeepsie. Yeah.
So I mean, she was apparently expelled from almost every school she attended as
Precocious. Is that what you're telling me?
was she. And I'm just going to mention it. Uh, People listening can decide if this is relevant or not. She was apparently raped at age 7
Yeesh.
when she went to stay with a family friend. And I can't find much more information about that without going into the sort of rabbit warren of anecdote and kind of hearsay. But
Well, trying to find out something that happened in 1919 or something is not going to be an easy thing to do.
I do think that, I could easily start telling myself stories about this young woman
Sure.
based on those scant facts. But she left for Paris when she was only 18. And she came back again almost immediately, less than a year later. She'd enrolled to study lighting and stagecraft, or at the School of Stagecraft in Paris. And I don't know whether it was that she didn't get on with it or something, but she returned then to study in New York again. She enrolled at Vassar and studied some kind of, experimental drama. Then she went back over into Europe. She was very mobile, and
Did she have family money? Because all of that takes money.
it does. But, I think she was already probably working, modelling alongside all of this. Again, somebody watching might know this better and could perhaps put in the comments if they know more about this. I'll certainly go back and look and try and find out more. Anyway, you were saying about, the photographs of her by others tend to look so fresh, so modern.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how many pictures from the 20s and 30s feel almost like Cameron pictures from the 1880s feel really modern. It almost feels like you could see there isn't a distance of time between you and the person in the picture.
But is that because the photographer has made that photograph, or is it because the model, Lee Miller herself, somehow exudes this?
I think it's a little bit what they put her in, and I think it's a little bit how she stands. I mean, like, I don't mean stand literally. I just, her place in the images and her way.
Yeah.
I mean, just even the way her feet are planted in this picture, and sort of like the shape of everything. Just, I could literally take that on my roof tomorrow, and it would still look the same.
But I do think, when I consider your work with dancers, for example, you've met lots of very theatrical, very talented, very mobile people who are involved in performance. To me, Lee Miller is a performer.
Yeah.
And her actual physicality, of course, she's renowned as a great beauty, but there's something about her body and the angles of that. People like to say that, the androgynous haircut adds to the sense of modernity, but it's actually about simply the shape of her body as well, and what she then can do with it in a performative way, I think.
I mean, there's an argument to be made that her life going forward, even the way she acted towards other people, and like how and where she traveled next, is all sort of a performance in its own way, right?
Sure. But she wasn't short of tragedy.
No. Oh, I'm not saying that she was. I'm just saying that, like, I think that I wonder if you ever met her, whether you'd ever get the real her, or it'd always be an affected way. And that could be because of the childhood trauma. That could be, being a model, being this beautiful woman, being a beautiful woman at that time, trying to spin in those circles, going into the war zones, like all of that stuff.
I'm not sure that any ordinary person, regardless of gender or gender identity, would have had the sheer force of, like, their will so powerful to just go and do this stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm not included in this series of images. We've seen the one image I've included of her as a model, shot by another famous photographer, of course. And then everything else in the presentation is by Lee Miller, but it's from a very narrow slice of time. So I'm not showing you any of her own more directly, overtly surrealistic images, although surrealism obviously is an influence in a lot of the images that we see. I'm also not showing you the fashion images that she took per se, and again, fashion feeds into even this photograph, Women Fire Watchers from London in 1940.
Yeah.
It's impossible, I think, for me to narrow down the images that really define her, because I don't think people can define her particularly.
Yeah, but this one is an interesting bridge between her fashion work and her work for the magazines and then her work in the war, you know? It straddles those two sides to some extent. Um,
I felt very critical, I have to say, when we were in the first couple of rooms. We get past the
mhm,
kind of Man Ray sort of erotic imagery, and
sure.
then you rather pass remarkably said, well, this is just like any photography student's work because there's lots of shots of architecture at,
Yeah.
measured
There
out.
was there was there was a lot of that stuff in there, sure.
And actually, I found that work really beautiful. Um,
Oh, see, I found it very ordinary, but I mean, but then again, you are much more the architecture photography fan than I am, as a general
Maybe,
rule.
but I found it sad that I mean you,
Yeah.
couldn't take it more at a kind of, not just face value, but it felt to me a true retrospective because we really were given such an amazing sweep of her life
I
story.
mean, we were looking at her trying to find her feet the way anybody who first gets a camera tries to find their feet, right? Like
Yes,
you
and I
start
love
taking
that,
pictures of all the different things around you, and yeah.
and I think that in that work, I could see Lee Miller,
Oh, interesting.
and then regardless of where she goes and what she sees, she takes those sensibilities of the surreal, the absurd, the tragic with her, and often in a dare I say it, fashion context, not just because it's a boot.
Sure.
Uh, I don't know off the top of my head right now anyone else whose work so converges, so many influences. Mm.
So many influences, period.
Mm.
Hmm. Can we agree that this shot was set up?
We can agree it.
I mean, do you believe that it is?
I don't think it matters, does it? I think it's
Well,
interesting to see
it
that a
it
lot of
matters if she sees herself as a photojournalist or if she's seeing herself as a surrealist.
well, no, because I think that she does quite deliberately fuse the artistic with the documentary. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of the beauty of this. I don't think that makes her images less reliable because they are images. And this is why I was so profoundly moved,
I think there's a lot of photojournalists who would disagree with you, but go ahead.
of course, and, tear me down about it. But from my point of
Yeah.
view, looking at Miller's work, the fact that I've been told it's Boot and Bullets from Sam Malo in 1944, this
Hmm.
is like being given the basics and then allowed to run with it if you want.
Okay.
And I think that that's okay. I understand that later, when she went to, Dachau, for example, she was making records.
Sure.
And the thing I was just talking about, this sense of being really profoundly moved, but also deeply challenged by her photographs, was that, and actually wrote it on the wall in one of the blurbs, the position of her to death and horror and disaster is sometimes so uncomfortable because we're so close, actually proximate to these things because of the nature of her using her camera, her Rolleiflex camera, which
Sure.
would have been at her, you know,
Waist level, yes.
the distance between her and this horror was very small. And I do appreciate then that in the recording of those things, when she went into the camps, it's important that we, I guess, trust what we see.
Sure.
But
You think because we get closer, you trust what you see? Like, because the pictures seem like they were taken from a closer vantage point that changes our perspective.
a little bit, but in terms of this image, is it okay to say that even if it has been set up,
Hmm.
that she's found a boot discarded and the bullets amidst the rubble, that simply putting them together doesn't actually change the narrative that much, apart from to make a surrealist overlay?
Again, I think that it depends whether you're making photojournalism or not. If you're making photojournalism, it steps over a line. If you're making surrealist art from war, then it's fascinating and well done.
Could she do both things, do you think?
I think there are times when she did both things. I think that in a lot of ways, her work was stronger when she was more conceptual rather than just observing. That would suck if you got your head shaved and everyone knew and they were like spitting on you walking down the street. I mean, sucks doing the thing that, you know.
Again, I look at these and do you see the photographer further shaming the French woman?
By recording it?
Or do you see somebody passively observing an event? Or do you see somebody who is somehow compassionate and, if not empathizing, and certainly bringing humanity to that woman?
I think all three of those things are true in different regards. Yeah, it's definitely gray. I mean, war in general is definitely shades of gray. You know, even a war like World War II, or as you would say, the Second World War.
I again, I was listening to Anthony Penrose, I think a Channel 4 mini documentary, maybe, and talking about his mum. The interviewer asked him, how do you think she would react to what's happening in the world now?
Yeah.
And hang on, I wrote it down.
How old was this interview from?
2 years ago, I think. Or maybe it was for the exhibition now. There was an exhibition not that long ago that was curated by Penrose of his mum's work. I think that was 2023. Anyway, I can't remember whether it was very recent or it was from that other exhibition, but he said that she would be, oh, I can't find it now. She would be heartbroken and furious.
I think we all are. But yes. Yeah.
I mean, part of the letting go of photography and then what happened afterwards for her, she married Roland Penrose. They had a very nice life and a very nice home that's now the foundation in Sussex. You can go and visit. But she did suffer from what people now would call PTSD, and she did go through periods of dreadful depression, and she was dependent on alcohol, I think, for a lot of the rest of her life. She was diagnosed with cancer in 1976. She died in 1977. She had a bit of a...
Crazy that I overlap with her.
Yeah, she had a bit of a golden girl moment. Did you know she became a cordon bleu chef?
I did not know that.
She went back to Paris and she studied cordon bleu cookery course. And then she became a sort of, almost not like a celebrity chef, but she did a lot of surrealist dinners for the art set. And when Tate had a big exhibition of Picasso's work in 1960, she prepared the dinner, which I think is testament to her connections, actually, as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, she photographed all these people and had known them for years, yeah. Do you... Sorry, go ahead and finish your...
No, please go on.
Her story is... her story is very compelling.
Yes.
The arc of her life is the arc of her career from the 20s through the 40s is very cinematic, as seen in the fact that they made a movie about it. How much of that sort of that story arc is a multiplier in why we remember her?
Well, I mean, there's just some people, isn't there, in history that are extra.
Yeah.
They bring extra.
Or they were in the right place at the right time to ride sort of a wave.
Yeah, I think sometimes we say that and there's a kind of bitter edge to that when we say it, and we mustn't about Lee Miller. I understand.
You think it's true of some people, but not of her?
Well, I think that there is luck involved for whatever you think luck is. I think I
Right.
must think the same. But I would really feel annoyed, actually, someone to tell me that Lee Miller was Lee Miller because of some happy accident, because she slept around, or because she bedded half the artistic elite in Paris. Even if we were alive in the 30s and we knew of her then and we were speaking about her, I think my mind would be changed if that was what I thought of her, because of what she then did through the war.
Okay. So if she hadn't gone into done more battle level stuff, you would have a different view of her?
No, I'm just saying that even if that were the case, I think that her period through the war, what she did in that time, would dispel the myth of her just being a lucky, pretty girl. I didn't put any of the images from it in here, but there's also a very fine group of images that she took in Egypt.
Sure.
In the 30s. Beautiful.
I like the one from the top of the pyramid.
What, the one that's
Although
got the shadow?
Yeah, I like the shot, but I couldn't stand the label that they put on it. Remember, that's the one that I pointed out to you, that it was just so curator up their own butt, that I was just like, oh, for God's sake, just stop. It's a picture of the pyramid. It wasn't an entire novel about the history of Egypt and the urbanism versus archaeological sites and all the things that they were trying to lay into it. But I'm that way with anything, I tend to find the labels overanalyze what was probably a much more simple explanation. They tend to make things more complicated than they are.
Is it enough to say she was a bold person?
Oh, I am not doubting that she was a force to be reckoned with and that she did great work. I'm just saying that
work. No, I just honestly, there's sometimes I really feel it kind of rising up in me. I think I would feel actually angry if somebody tried to tell me that she wasn't somehow relevant.
No, I'm not saying that she's not relevant, but I also know that at the same time, I'm sure there were lots of other people, a lot of other women who were doing great work too, who don't have the story, and that's why we don't look at their work or remember them. That's my point.
I would never ever choose to diminish the women of history. I speak to them. I hope that we speak of them on our show sometimes. I really want us to do that, to represent them.
Yeah.
But I do think that, and notice, I haven't actually referred to Miller often as a woman. I've said person.
Yeah.
Because regardless of her gender, I think she's extraordinary. And I think this is an interesting aspect of her work. And I'm going to now talk about gender particularly because she did photograph women a lot. She found women in amongst what she was doing always, it seems to me. Now, I know I'm looking at this through my own feminist lens. And of course, there's again a confirmation bias that, of course, I know she was a woman and I can see photographs of women that she took. But there does seem to be, like, when we search this image for the sort of the shame or the humility, the humanity, whatever we might find in this.
Do you think she has empathy for that woman, or do you think she has disgust for that woman?
I think that, as you've mentioned already, we can think lots of things or feel lots of things at once.
Sure.
I'm not sure that we could say what Miller felt, but in seeing her photograph of this moment and in looking at the other photographs, particularly from Rennes, where she met or observed these women, there is something really humane about them. And when we look at an image like this, which is the most beautiful, soft portrait, and of course it's the the
Of
body
a dead
of
person. Yeah.
a Nazi who has taken their own life. Are we looking at somebody who's seeking to poke fun, satirize? Are we looking at that? I don't feel that when I look at these photographs. I don't see that she was doing anything other than
You don't see spectacle. You don't see any of that.
compassionately sharing. And the graphic content warning when we were in the exhibition, and you go in the room and you see the photographs from the camps. Both the photographs of bodies, which did tend to have larger clusters of people around them. I think people are repulsed and almost like addicted to images of death and horror. But it was interesting also to see the photographs she made of the living, the guards, for example. And more interesting still for me, the photographs of the women who she encountered, whether dead or alive, because of this cataclysmic event, the war.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly I think that the Second World War, probably more than any other event in human history, just sucked up human lives like a vacuum cleaner, And I mean that both from the point of view of death and the lives that these people were leading and what they ended up leading,
Well, I found this quite a haunting thing. Was, again, it might have been Anthony Penrose again in some interview or another, or maybe somebody else talking about Miller, how she felt when she was surveying the bodies in the camps, is that sometimes she would be looking for friends that had gone missing in Paris, that she may have believed would have gone to those camps or might have ended up there. And I think perhaps there's a bit of, mythologizing happening in that anecdote. Sure. But I also think it's very difficult for us now to appreciate somebody like Miller, who had a great mobility. She got places. Her many encounters with so many different types of people, and especially, let's face it, the elite, the intellectuals, the artists, people that would have been enemies of a Nazi regime. I can understand that she would feel very keenly that, if nothing else, she wanted to bring attention to simply life lost through things beyond our control.
Do you think she was actually thinking about all that, or do you think that that's what you're putting on it?
Well, I'm just referring back to what I've read.
What you've read, yeah.
But it really struck me as something that I didn't think of when we were in the exhibition, is that she was searching sometimes. Or you could say in a poetic way, couldn't you, that she was searching her whole life for things that confirmed to her what life meant. And I suppose that is at odds with the documentarian who's passively observing, that there seems to maybe be a sense that she is invested emotionally. I mean, that certainly would justify that for the rest of her life she hid her photographs, even from her own child.
Well, also probably painful for her, right?
Painful for her, and I wonder if she felt the pain of everyone.
Yeah.
I wonder if she was an empath. I don't read her as the narcissist that I've heard other people complaining about, Bill.
Blaming me.
I'm seeing somebody who's an empath, who's vivid.
Maybe she is all of those things.
Maybe.
Most of us are.
Anyway, Bill, it was a great pleasure to meet you in Tate Britain.
Actually walking around, looking at stuff together.
And you made a photograph of me in the members' room
I did.
that made me look like wrinkly.
You think it made you look like that? Really? I'm pulling it up now. I think you look lovely in that picture.
I much preferred the photo shoot in Bath, I have to say.
All right. Well, next time we'll take more.
Anyway, speaking of seeing, I'll speak to you soon.
All right. See you.